Hello, everybody, and welcome to what you might have thought was not ever going to happen again. I jest. Welcome to Adventures in History, and I hope that you all are having a wonderful whatever time zone it is where you are. We've already got people subbing in on the break. Nixlotl, thank you so much for the sub, and Green Herring, thank you for the sub. You all are amazing people, and you have supported me even when I've really needed to take breaks. The summer was spent at the beginning part probably not resting as much as I should have or as much as I needed to, and the response to that was me getting very lazy for the last couple of weeks and not really wanting to do anything except for hanging out with my wife and watching movies and playing video games. So I guess it was like summer break from Adventures in History, but now we're starting a new term, perhaps. I don't know. Yeah, history is once again in progress. It's okay, right? It didn't suddenly stop. I was just being lazy. So let me say hello to everybody. DCI, thanks for coming in. Matt, good to see you. Viper, hope you're having a good one. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate you sticking around even though I haven't streamed in a couple of weeks. So it has been a restful time. I really did need to like completely unplug. It was really good for me, especially after I got sort of, I don't even know how to describe it. The Tolkien stuff was either going to happen or it wasn't, and making it happen, yeah, it was kind of burned out, but it was more like just scraped, like butter scraped over too much bread. The puppy is right behind me, by the way, in case you're wondering what is happening just slightly here off screen. Yeah, it was there was just a lot of stuff going on and too much going on for what summer was, and I realized that streaming 8 hours in 4 days is probably more than I should have, which is crazy because I know some people that'll get on and stream 8 hours at a time, which hats off to those people. I can't do it. So how to celebrate that? Well, I'm probably going to stream a long time tomorrow, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. So welcome in. For those of you that don't know, the show is called Adventures in History. What we do is talk about history, but we talk about it in a way that is entertaining and accessible and not stuck up and ivory tower and boring as crap. So we've had a bit of a hiatus. I haven't done one of these streams in about 3 weeks, which is a longer time than I probably have taken off since I started streaming about 3 years ago. So there's that. What's up, Tropical? Good to see you, my friend. Hope you're having a good one. And yeah, we've been just going through history chronologically, and we're currently talking about stuff from the 10th century, which is year 900 to the year 1000. And we do stuff sort of regionally speaking. So we're going to be talking today, or tonight, or this afternoon, or wherever you are, here about Central Europe. DCI, we're not actually running out of history. The problem is that we're running into too much history. If I'm being really honest, we're getting to the point where just about everybody has writing, which means that there is a giant fire hose of information that I can try to drink from, and it is not going to make it any easier. I did make a post about this a few weeks ago. I guess it's been almost a month ago now. In the Discord, I'm wondering now if my bot is dead because it has been so long since I've streamed. Let me go tap Cloudbot on the head. Make sure that he is working. There we go. There we go. All right. So you can go back and look at the Discord if you want to, and find that post that I put a couple of weeks ago that talks a little bit about how the format's going to change here in just a little bit. A few episodes more in this phase, and then we're going to shift to a little bit more of a regional era format instead of holding really, really strictly to a century. We're going to sort of zoom out just a little bit so as to not to get stuck so deeply in the weeds. Nell, welcome in. Dang. Well, DCI, the current model that we're under isn't actually the same model that we used when we first started. When I first started streaming, everything was very freeform, and I talked about stuff in a chronological order, but really sort of as I felt like it, which was fun in one way, but it got me sidetracked and got me down into rabbit holes of my own design. And I realized that I needed actually a little bit more structure, so that's when we started adopting a time limit. And the original time limit was like 300 or 400 years, and then we cut that down to about 200 years, and then we cut it down to about 100 years. And we've been running on 100-year blocks now for about a year and a half. So this is not the first time we have changed a format, and it probably won't be the last time. And the shows are still going to be the same. We're going to still show up and we're going to talk about history, but it's going to be like the example that I gave, right? Next time we get over to Japan, we are going to just talk about just 11th century Japan. We're going to talk about the era of Japan that was going on at that time period, right? So it's not going to be constrained to just 100 years. It's probably going to be like about 150, 160 years worth of material. That doesn't mean I'm going to leave out any of the really cool stuff. We just can't get down into the weeds as much, because if we do, we're going to end up having to shrink that 100-year window down to about a 50-year window, and then about a 10-year window, and then about a 1-year window, because we're just running into the period of time where history is more readily available. And you can get really, really, really granular with a lot of this stuff. But what that's going to mean for us is we're going to hit a little bit more wave top on some of this stuff, which is going to potentially generate more interest in viewer request streams, because I know that some people are interested in certain things, and we'll run into some stuff where we'll talk about it a little bit, and I'll give you the lay of the land, and that might make somebody go, I'd really like for him to dig into that some more. And there comes a great opportunity for viewer request. So we're still doing those as well. We've got one coming up next week, which is the last one that we voted on a long time ago. The last viewer request we did was on the Toledo War back in July, so it's been a little bit. But the viewer request episode is on the Dutch East India Corporation, so we're going to be talking about that on Tuesday, and we'll wrap up Europe next Thursday. And then we'll have a couple more streams, and we'll figure out the next phase of Adventures in History. But don't worry, it's not going to change what we do here. If you've shown up and you appreciate what we do, you're not going to be out of place when we shift the focus a little bit. It's just going to make it easier for me to present things in logical groups without having to get so bogged down that everything gets lost, right? It's going to be a little bit more of a holistic approach instead of a piece-by-piece approach. Because, you know, we talked about Japan, and then it might be 6 months again before we talk about Japan again, or 3 months or 4 months. It'd be nice to tell the whole part of the story in one go, instead of just telling like the first part, and then the second part, and then the third part with, you know, stretched out maybe over a year or something like that. So, all right. So, we're not going to zoom down to 50 years. We're actually going to zoom out a little bit, just a little bit. Before you forget, you'll be proud to know that you're taking a history class this term. Interesting, history of the slave trade. I'm guessing when you say slave trade, you mean the transatlantic slave trade, the triangular trade route, which was basically 15, 16, 1700s. And I doubt that you're talking about the Indian slave trade, which was the predecessor to the Atlantic slave trade. What's up, Maddie? Good to see you. What topic is super sad? I have missed the antecedent for that. But anyway, let's get ourselves rolling, and we'll chime back in. Oh, the slave trade. Yeah. That is the super bummer topic. Yeah, Tropical, we talked about the Indian slave trade in the last Adventures in History, 146. We talked about it a little bit in 145 and a little bit in 144 as well. So you can watch the VODs for those and check them back up. This actually makes me have not a panic attack moment, but a small, like, oh, I wonder if I did something dumb moment. I hope I didn't do anything dumb. You don't have any idea what I'm doing right now, but I'm looking at my VODs to see if I missed saving episodes in my hiatus. 77. 42, 43. No, I didn't. Okay, cool. I'll just go ahead and open those up. Make sure that I get those highlit. I'll do that after stream though, so you don't have to sit here and watch me do it. Okay. Yeah, it's that one. Wondering just how granular history gets. Google tells me that the first newspaper was published in Strasbourg in 1605 by John Carolus. Counted on distinguished stories. You can get really well. It's not just the written sources, but the written sources are absolutely what makes history much more involved. There are a lot of written sources out there, and as we get closer to the modern day, it's not one of those like slow, gradual curves. It's more like a giant spike that just ascends really, really, really fast with the amount of history that we have. The problem stops being interpreting the two sources that we have to try to figure out how much of that one or two sources is valid, and the problem becomes sifting through the 15 sources that we have to determine which one or two of those people had actual knowledge of the material, right? Which is a similar problem, because the problem always boils back to validity and trustworthiness. And as people lie and people are all biased and things like that, no human source is ever really going to be completely unbiased or completely trustworthy. But having 7 sources and sort of triangulating multiple sources at one event in time is a problem that I would much rather have than having one historical source that is the only thing that we have from this period of time and just having to trust that person. Similar problem with a different outcome or a different angle. She usually uses some kind of weird defense against the U.S. slave trade. Yeah, where people are like, well, we didn't come up with it. That's like saying, or like somebody that was a murderer that shot somebody with the gun going, I didn't invent the gun. Still shot somebody, right? There is a whole lot of history. Absolutely green herring. Allie Briggs, what's up? Good to see you. Newspapers never lie? Exactly. They never lie. Yeah, for real. Like, other people murder people too. All right, let's actually talk about our topic. And I've realized here that my header is slightly wrong. We're not talking about Eastern Europe. We're talking about Central Europe. And we're going to start with the eastern part of Central Europe. most notably with a country called East Francia. And you're like, what the devil is East Francia? Well, I'm glad you asked. Here's our map. Yay, maps. We're back to having maps again. Okay, cool. So check it out. This is what Europe looked like roughly in 900 Common Era AD. Notice here in Central Europe, we have a lot of different stuff going on. We don't have one country that is the remainder of the Holy Roman Empire. We have about 5 countries that are all sort of fuzzy, right? Yeah, so Francia, again, goes back to Charlemagne. When Charlemagne took over and became the first Holy Roman Emperor in the year 800, he controlled pretty much all of this. Now, thanks to that old Carolingian law where you had to leave your kids a little bit of the territory, the country gets split up. And we've talked quite a bit about the Carolingians in the past, how they ruled together, and then they broke things up. And then they ruled together, and then they broke things up. Well, in 900, it's pretty broken up. Yes, a very frank discussion, right? You always get the Holy Roman Empire confused with the Holy Roman Empire. I'm sure there's a joke there, and I'm just completely losing it, and I apologize. What's up, Cliff? Good to see you. Greetings from East Francia. Excellent. So, East Francia is, of the groups, the more powerful. And it's also the one that is the closest to some of these other people that are causing trouble. Especially these people like the Magyars, the Moravians, the Bulgarians. You can see here that our borders get a little bit fuzzy over here. That's actually done on purpose, and I quite appreciate the fact that they made these borders fuzzy, because the fluidity of this side of the empire was rather evident by constant raids by these people groups into East Francia. So even though East Francia was probably the more powerful of the two, it's got more problems. And the problems are going to be multifaceted. Part of it is because they are big and powerful and they have cool stuff and everybody wants cool stuff. And part of it is ideological. There's some argumentation between different branches of the Carolingian family about who's supposed to be taking care of whom. And there's ethnic differences, because a lot of those people that were on that eastern border were very much not Frankish, nor were they what a lot of the East Franks would have really considered themselves, which is Germans. So some of the borders in that area are not based on nice geographical landmarks. Like we don't have any really good river that just magically becomes the border, or on this side of the mountain range that becomes the border. Yeah, so it's a little bit more of a fluid system where we kind of think we're in East Francia and we maybe pay taxes to them, but then the Magyars show up and they raid us, so we don't pay taxes to the East Francians anymore because they're not taking care of us. We're going to suck up to the Magyars so that they don't murder us again. You know, that kind of stuff is a pretty big deal. What's up, Frank? Good to see you. Now, what's going to start happening in the late 800s, especially in East Francia, is that the descendants of the Carolingian dynasty are going to end up being weaker and weaker and weaker. And by the time we get to the early 1900s, a group of people called the Saxons were actually going to be in a much more powerful position in the noble houses of East Francia. And by the time we get to 919, this gentleman becomes the first German king of East Francia. This guy's name is Henry. He's frequently referred to as Henry the Fowler, because he liked to hunt with falcons and birds and stuff. So if we see him pictured here, there's not really a much better image of him, but we can see that he's carrying a shield and he's got a big spear, and his coin says Enricus Rex, so King Henry. And he's going to be the guy that brings Germans to the forefront. And in 919 or so, he's going to start trying to unite the Germanic tribes inside of East Francia as an attempt to solidify German control over the kingdom. Now, he had, of course, been the product of intermarriage between some of the Carolingian powers and the local nobility, but that's going to be the big leg up. But what's going to really give him a lot of momentum is when he starts taking the fight to these people groups along the border. He's going to go fight with the Magyars and beat them up a bit. He's going to beat up some Danes. He's going to beat up some Slavs. And this is going to give a lot of people some hope that this guy is going to be the one that brings us peace. We're going to be able to trust him because while the Carolingians said, sure, we'll help you, this is the guy that's actually doing it. And when he gets recognized as king, this is a big blow to the heirs of Charlemagne. Now, of course, if you play the cousin game, Henry could probably make a claim to the throne if every other direct descendant of Charlemagne was dead, but that's how noble houses work. Everybody intermarries, and your family tree sort of becomes like the family shrub because it doesn't really fork, it just sort of grows sideways, right? And Henry's going to be in a pretty powerful position, and what's really, really powerful about him is that he manages... Can we call him Captain Falcon? Absolutely. He would have been happy to punch people in the face and yell about it while he was doing it. What's up, KP and Lumpy? Welcome to both. And Kyle, good to see everybody. Welcome back in. Thanks for coming by. Appreciate it. So, Henry's going to be able to do something quite spectacular in that as a Saxon who was Germanic, not Carolingian or Frankian, he's going to manage to pass the throne to his son, Otto. And he's going to become Otto the Great. But, you know, that's sort of spoiling things, but it's what happens. Now, this is the best image I could find of Otto that I thought was timely. You can find a lot of other pictures of Otto from way later in his date. This one sort of makes him look like he's, I don't know, like a Terminator robot or something with the weird eyes, but here's Otto. Yeah. He's not that great of a looking dude. Anyway, you see a cow nose? So here are his eyes, and here's his nose, and he's got a little mustache and a pointy goatee here.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
All right, so Kyle, thank you so much for that subscription, my friend. As always, there are your Spartaci, and I need to give some Spartaci for Nixolotl. There's some for you, my friend, and here comes some for Green Herring. We are all Spartacus. Yeah, I think this is probably a fairly poor picture of what's maybe something that's a bit more defined in other locations, or if you saw it in real life, but I don't know. I've never actually seen anything specifically from Otto the Great. I'd love to travel more to be able to get better pictures. So let's also do some shout outs. So Nixolotl is an artist that streams here on Twitch, and you might know Nixolotl from the puppy head pat emote, which is one of our fan favorites here in the stream. We've also got Allie Briggs in the house, who is perhaps best known around here for her majestic chonky horse animated emote. Allie is a great streamer as well that does a lot of fantasy art, lots of dragons, but also other stuff. Very cool streamer. So we've also got in the room my good friend Lumpy Dragon Potato.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Fidelia, thank you so much for 23 months, almost 2 years. Good gracious, that's a lot. Thank you all. Appreciate that. You should go follow Lumpy for all of your good conversation and Minecraft needs. Lots of cool people hanging out in the stream tonight. Anyway, so that's Otto the Great. What's up with this guy? Why do we call him the Great? Well, part of the reason we call him the Great is because he ruled for a really, really long time. He took the throne in 936 as a fairly young man, and he's going to rule until 973. That's a big ol' honkin' reign, right? For any ruler at any point. It's almost 40 years on the throne. And in that time period, he is going to accomplish just a ton of stuff. One of the things that he's going to be most successful at doing is uniting the Germanic peoples. So when we call the country East Francia, this tells us that there are Franks that are in control that have named the country. But a lot of the population of East Francia were some of these Germanic peoples that had moved into this region of Central Europe hundreds and hundreds of years before the Franks showed up. Well, I'm not hundreds of years before, but hundreds of years before what we're talking about right now, towards the end of the Roman period. You know, so you had your Goths and your Angles and your Saxons and your Jutes that moved over into this sort of region right here and had just always been around. And the power that is going to be held by Henry and his descendants is going to be in putting these Germanic peoples together. And by creating a block of power, he's going to ensure that he gets to stay in power himself. But the stability of his kingdom is actually going to draw some attention, right? Specifically, there are going to be some really big invasions. In 955, there was a really, really big Magyar invasion. So again, the Magyars are what we would probably refer to today as Hungarians, who sit right about here. They had made a big push into Central Europe and were causing all sorts of trouble down here in Italy, as far away as West Francia, through the Kingdom of Burgundy here, all over East Francia. Just a big, big mass of these Magyars, and he's going to defeat them and push them out. And in the process of doing so, he's going to recognize that the Kingdom of Italy, which had been held by Charlemagne himself and various other descendants of the Carolingian dynasty, is sort of ripe for the picking. And by 961, Otto is going to conquer the Kingdom of Italy and unite it with his greater Kingdom of East Francia. And what's going to be interesting here is some strategic and symbolic moves that he decides to make. One of them is that he decides to move his capital to Rome. And this is something that had not been done by a big emperor in a really, really long time. Like, even the Romans didn't use Rome as their capital for almost the last 100 years that the Western Roman Empire existed. So this is a big symbolic move that is going to put him at the forefront of everybody's attention. Because when he gets to Rome, he's basically staring everybody else down, saying, I'm in charge now. Because, of course, we have to remember at this point, the biggest power in Western Europe was the Catholic Church. And when Otto gets to Rome and makes that his capital, he's going to make it very clear that he wants the title Holy Roman Emperor. And this is a title that had been on the books and claimed and not necessarily always given the right way or always held with the right amount of power. But Otto isn't really going to back down. And this is not something that anybody else wants. Nobody wants to give Otto the title Holy Roman Emperor. Most notably, the other Franks. The West Frankian kingdoms and their leaders are not a fan of this, because that's clearly saying Otto, this German guy, is the king of all of Charlemagne's territory, including us over here in West Francia. And we don't like that idea very much. We don't like this concept. This is also not really cared for very much by the Byzantines, because the Byzantine emperor at that time was the only emperor in Christianity, and he doesn't like having competition. It's also not something that the Pope likes. The Pope at the time is a guy named John the 12th, who sort of gets strong-armed into giving him the title. Moose, I don't think I heard my bits alert go off. Maybe I still have it turned off. I apologize. Moose, thank you so much for the bits. How much time was needed to go from Rome to Paris in that time? It would have taken you probably about a week. I suspect you would have left Rome by sea and come around here. So around like Marseille and around Provence, and land right about here and then go north. So the ship journey is probably about 2 days, and then probably another 5 to get here. So it's not as bad as it sounds. You also have to remember that there were tons and tons of Roman roads that were connecting all of these regions together, right? And the Roman roads were pretty good about saving time. Now, that would have been a fairly heavy clip, right? You would have been moving pretty fast. You would not have been wanting to do that as a leisurely pace. If you were an emperor and you were just sort of moving around doing things at your own time, it would have probably taken you closer to a month, right? But if I'm running a message that is an urgent dispatch from the Pope to the Emperor of the Western Franks, I could probably get that done in about a week. Probably. I would get a dispensation for traveling and working really hard on a Sunday if it was coming from the Pope, so it wouldn't really bother anybody if I did that. Let me check my bits situation here.
You shall have camels, horses, an armed escort, provisions, desert vehicles, and tanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, so it's supposed to work. I don't know why it didn't work. But thank you for the bits. Apologies for the craziness. Yeah, couriers are going to move pretty fast, and they're going to move along existing systems where there were set up stables where you could change out horses and move pretty fast and things like that. So, all right. But Otto gets Holy Roman Imperial title, and he gets this in 863. And as soon as he gets it, the Pope at the time, again, a guy named John the 12th, it doesn't really like the fact that he got beaten into this and got pushed around into this and sort of got strong-armed into this. And Otto is going to decide that it's just time to get rid of the Pope. Now, this is a really interesting moment because previously, since about the late 700s, maybe even into the late 600s or the early 700s, it has been the Pope getting rid of rulers. It has not been rulers getting rid of the Pope. It doesn't really work that way. But Otto has a bunch of territory and a lot of power. And with that power comes influence and ability to get away with doing things. So Otto is going to have John the 12th deposed and gets rid of the Pope. And that's sort of a shockwave because not anybody can do that, right? The king of the West Franks couldn't have done that. The king of Burgundy certainly couldn't have done that. The Byzantine emperor couldn't have done that, but Otto could. And that's really going to send this sort of mental image out that I'm in charge and I can do whatever I want to. And there are going to be a lot of challenges to his title, to his position, against his life. He's going to have to survive assassination attempts. Because when he does this, people go, oh crap, if he can control the Pope and has Holy Roman Imperial title, this guy's basically untouchable. And he kind of was. His dynasty is going to go on to be very, very powerful. Here's another image of Otto. I don't know how much I trust this one because it's in that sort of high Renaissance art style where everybody basically looks the same, right? So like here's a priest who looks basically just like Jesus, except Jesus looks like he's sort of surprised here. And here is Otto. Now Otto is holding a church. This is church of a place called Magdeburg. This is carved out of ivory, and it shows Otto here basically giving the church to Jesus. This is a pretty common image that was started way back in the late antique period. If you go to Hagia Sophia today, there are murals of the ancient Roman emperors from like the 500s giving churches to God and stuff like that. So the imagery is important itself because he's equating himself with these great rulers of the past, but also, look at the cool stuff that I'm doing now. I can hire really cool artisans. Now, of course, being Renaissance art, it's horribly out of proportion, right? Like, what is this leg attached to? Right? So if he's standing in profile like this, and this hip is here, his other hip should be right here, not over here. But, we're medievalists, and we're doing art stuff, and we don't know proportion. And that's okay. That's why Jesus is so shocked. He's like, how in the crap are you standing on that leg when that leg is literally disjointed from your body? Jesus is just freaking out over here. Anyway, picture of Otto. But Otto's sons are going to take over, body shaming Otto the Great. He's dead now. I don't think he's going to mind. He has a small but chunky horse between his... Yeah, he's riding a very small chunky horse that is hidden under the robes of state. Here's his son. This is Otto II. Otto II is going to continue his father's success. He's going to end up taking almost the entire Italian peninsula. And this is going to be a pretty high watermark. He almost manages to take the entire Italian peninsula, which had not been unified since the time of the Western Roman Empire. And he's a pretty powerful dude. He's going to end up having problems inside of his own territory, though, especially over in the eastern part of his territory. There's going to be a big revolt by the Slavic people, and he's going to have to cancel some plans while he's campaigning down in Italy to go back and bring that area back under the fold. This is Otto III. Now, Otto III is a bit of an interesting character. He is equally powerful. He, if anything, has a bit more power than even Otto the Great when it comes to manipulation of the church. Otto III really wanted to get a German pope on the docket. We want Germans to be the Holy Roman Emperors, and we want a German pope. And this guy right here, who we'll come back to, this is Sylvester II. He's actually going to be the first German pope. Now, how do you make a German pope? Well, you kill the previous popes. And Otto is going to end up killing 2 popes to clear the way for his chosen appointee. Now, he doesn't kill him himself, of course, but he gives the order to have them killed. And now we're even into a new realm, right? So Granddad got rid of John the 12th, but Otto III is having them executed. Now, there's some, false and trumped up charges. There are, there is what you might consider sort of due diligence. But if we're really being honest, everybody knows that Otto III is killing popes. Someone is killing the popes. That's a bit of a comic book reference. I don't know if anybody knows someone is killing the children. Anyway, pretty good comic book that's out right now if you're interested in the comic book world. Pope Killa. Yeah, indeed. So the Western Frankish kingdom has its own problems dealing with all of this stuff, but right now the Eastern Frankish kingdom in the 900s is kind of on top of the European stack if we're just looking at pure power. But what's actually going on over in the East Frankish world? Well, they're going to have a bit of a shift themselves with a guy named Hugh Capet. And you're like, okay. I almost made this title for tonight, Hugh Otto No, but I wanted to only try to put one pun in because I didn't know if that would make it too hard to identify the original song title. But anyway, there we go. Anyway, Hugh Capet. Now, if you have ever heard of brain read that as huge carpet, yeah, so close enough. If you want to see an image of him, here he is. He looks like he might sell you some carpet. Like, if you would like some cost-efficient floor coverings for your home, you could check out my my overstock warehouse. And see, this is his measuring stick. So he's going to go measure your home and get you some good flooring, right? You know that carpet might save on your heating and cooling bills? You can't spell Hugh without Ugg. That's true. That's true. The Burger King from the 80s. Right, he does sort of look like the Burger King. I agree. And if this was a little bit more regal looking and with like the Burger King, if I recall correctly, I might be conflating it with when they brought him back in the 90s. He had like a fur-lined cloak that went around his neck. Call 1-800-EMPIRE. So, Hugh Capet, who is this guy? Well, Hugh Capet is the result of a lot of shifting political power. So, in the western part of the Frankish kingdom, there were a lot of things going on. Most notably, the kings were really, really quickly losing power. The western part of the Frankish Empire had always been more fractured, partially because it was always more populated, and also because it had more big cities. And with big cities come the need for things like, taxes, and that generates money, and that means that you want this stuff, but with more cities also comes more nobility that you're going to have to keep happy, so there's that thing kicking in. But in West Francia, you're going to have several really big duchies that emerge. So a duchy is ruled by a duke, right? And a duke is technically second in line to the king. But you get a lot of really powerful dukes like Flanders and Champagne and Brittany and Aquitaine and Gascony and Normandy. And all of these different dukes are vying to be the next king. They want their sons to marry the princesses of the sitting king to make grandkids that can be future kings. And part of the reason why there's such a fractioning of power in especially West Francia is also because of the Viking invasions. Let's not forget that of all of the territories here on the continent, this region of Europe was absolutely on the mainland. Again, just on the mainland. But this region on the mainland was way frequently targeted by invasions. And in fact, the Duchy of Normandy came from the fact that the Normans, the Vikings, had taken territory within France, right? This is going back to some of the stuff that we talked about previously. So there's a lot of instability in the West. And this doesn't sit well with a lot of the people. And the Carolingians are going to lose face because they can't get rid of the Vikings. These Normans, when they show up, are big, like physically big. They're also very loosely Christian affiliated. Now, a lot of them get baptized, but if we're just being honest, they're still very not good Christians. They're still killing each other like crazy. They still settle their disputes with blood. They still have multiple wives. They don't really comport themselves as good, proper Christians. And that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable because of their military prowess. And that also makes the West Frankish kings look like weaklings because they can't get rid of these scruffy pagan people, right? When the Magyar invasions start kicking up in the early 900s, this is going to further erode power of the West Frankish kings because they can't get rid of them either. And what's ended up going to happening is basically the king of France, or the king of West Francia, is going to end up really only having power in Paris. There's a region right around Paris called the Ile de Paris, the Ile de France, the island of France, which is this territory that's right around Paris. And that's really all they're going to have. And the last Carolingian is King Louis V, and he's just not a good king. He doesn't have any power. Nobody really takes care of him. Nobody really cares to pay attention to him. He's a kid, even just at that. And Hugh Capet is a noble where a lot of other people sort of wrote this guy out. He's going to take over as king, but he's only really going to control just Paris and sort of like the suburbs of Paris. That's really all that he ends up having. So what do you do with that, right? You're surrounded by all these big duchies that are way more powerful than you. If you're Hugh Capet, what do you do to accomplish anything with this? Well, you start playing politics and you start making deals with people. And one of Hugh Capet's biggest skills is playing people off of each other. He really, really understood the way that the human mind worked. And he understood the political layout of West Francia at the time. He understood how the nobles were getting along or not getting along, depending on how it needed to go. And he was able to basically play let's make a deal, sort of like the episode of The Office where, you start off with like $1 and you end up with something really, really cool at the end of the episode, right? It's just he starts off with the Ile de France and ends up running all of France. And it's really, really crazy how he gets into all of this stuff. I could probably do an entire stream just on his life, but one of his biggest wins that really solidifies his line on the throne is that, he's very much a Littlefinger, right? Exactly, make friends. He gets the Normans to line up. And this is something that a lot of people at the time really, really, really hated him for. A lot of people really got very, very upset when he starts reaching out the olive branch to the Normans because, again, they're outsiders. They're not good nobility that had been around since the Roman times that could trace their lineage back to blah, 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 beyond Charlemagne, yada, yada, yada. They were the big, gruff, pagan outsiders that nobody else really wanted to make friends with. But Hugh goes, that's exactly who I want to make friends with because they'll be good friends. If I'm good friends to them, they'll be good friends to me. And when you have these giants that are scary and have really good ships and don't mind cracking people's skulls open on your side, everybody else kind of has to play nice with you, right? Now, he does have to concede quite a bit of power to the Normans, and this is going to be one thing that ends up leading to a whole bunch of mess in the next century with this guy named William, who ends up being able to claim leadership of England and France at the same time, because one of the things that happens is the Normans start marrying into the royal line and get connected to the kings of England. All of this stuff is connected, just like all of the royal families of Europe are connected. But Hugh is a brilliant administrator. And his line, the Capetian line, is going to rule France for almost the next 400 years. And it starts with just this little sliver of land and some willingness to take really risky bets that he had a gut feeling on, and to line up with people that were perhaps a bit unsavory. But he spun this straw into gold and made some deals with the Pope to make sure that his family would be protected, because again, at this time period, it's Otto, and well, the Ottos, Ottos plural. Hugh Capet rules from 987 to 996, around the time of Otto III. So the Eastern Franks are the at that time the Holy Roman Empire is going to be much more powerful than West Francia, and theoretically could have, if they really, really wanted to expend a lot of power, gone over and beat up everybody on the other side and taken over West Francia. But you do some maneuvering, you get the popes to sort of sanctify your line and say that they deserve to rule. Now, I guess the Germans could just kill the Pope, but there's only so many times you can, the OT. There are only so many times you can kill the Pope and get away with it, right? Or at least you would think there are only so many times you can kill the Pope and get away with it. But if we look at this area in time overall, not just on the political side, what's happening in Central Europe during this century? There is going to be a small but notable uptick in learning, specifically in the Holy Roman Empire or Otto's territory. Because Otto has so much contact with the Byzantines, he's going to end up coming in pretty big on the arts and the scholarship side of stuff. And there's a little bit of, not necessarily a renaissance, but we might call it more of like a revival, perhaps, that's going to kick up during the Otto's period. It doesn't really last too much, but some of the humanism and scholasticism that starts during this time period is going to go on for a little while, and in the next couple of years it's going to give us the Renaissance. It's not necessarily a direct unbroken line, but the fact that there are rulers that rule these really big territories that are interested in the arts, that are going to patronize works, that are going to build buildings and promote the copying of books and stuff like that, is going to keep the embers lit long enough for the Renaissance to happen in the first place, right? We haven't even got to the Crusades yet, so that's going to be the biggest immediate predecessor to Pope killing limit. Yeah, all right, you killed your popes, you got to go home for the rest of the season, right? What's up, hydrocannabinoid? What's up? The poison, the number is not okay. With poison, the number is not small. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but how many popes can you kill with poison? The number's not small. You can kill a lot of popes with poison. I've worked myself into it and figured it out. But good to see you. Welcome in. Usually they would have them executed publicly. Making them drink poison is a very dignified way to go, because they get to die privately in their own room, or at least in a cell. If you're going to kill a pope, you want to get maximum effect out of that. You want to kill that pope in public, and try them for heresy or something like that, and then chop their head off. Right? You don't want to do pope killing quietly. I guess, I don't know, you might want to kill popes quietly, but at the time, the Ottos were pretty interested in doing stuff out in the open. If I took the Pope to the Via Dolorosa and killed him in public, nobody would do anything. They couldn't touch me. All right. That actually did happen. So another big thing that's going to happen during this period, and we've talked about this a little bit, but it's worth pointing out directly. There is a really big growing conflict in Central Europe between the papacy and the growing power of these political states. The popes had become very used to being powerful, very, very comfortable ruling their own territory. There was even for a long period of time a region called the Papal States that they ruled directly, that connected basically Ravenna and Rome. And they were effectively the sovereigns of that territory. And they had grown very, very, very big, politically speaking. When you start kicking people out of positions and when you start giving out these big titles, that is a really powerful spot to be in. But the instability of these political entities is going to cause a lot of trouble, because if you're the Pope, you want to always try to keep on the good side of the most powerful politicians. And there's only so much that you can do to threaten them before, especially somebody like one of the Ottos is going to get rid of you or kill you, right? So you have to start playing a different game where you have bounds around your power. And that's going to be really, really tenuously built, right? Your cards are going to have to stack up just the right way to be able to withstand the table shaking. You're not going to be able to just do whatever you want to anymore. And that's not something that a lot of the popes appreciated. They didn't like the idea that predecessors, popes, or popes previous could do basically whatever they wanted to in the face of whatever is coming around, whereas these people now have to sort of toe the line of political leaders. I mentioned this guy earlier. We can show you again if we go over here. This is Sylvester II. Sylvester II is an interesting dude because he's going to end up being a political appointee in a weird spot. So I just realized that I made an error earlier saying that he was the first German pope. The first German pope was Gregory V, and I don't know why I said it was him. Sylvester the Third is the first Frankish pope. He's the first French pope. He did get put on the throne or on the seat by Otto III, which was really weird. But Otto put Gregory V on first, and then Gregory V ended up not following what Otto III wanted, and Otto III had him killed. So Otto III's making all kinds of popes now. I apologize for getting that mixed up earlier. I said that this guy was a German, and he's actually a Frank, so that's on me. Not that anybody would have been able to call me on that unless you just absolutely decided to go do a whole bunch of background research. But, you know, people don't light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Likewise, you don't kill a pope and keep it a secret. Yeah, you want to be a bloody city on a hill, right? I'm with you, Frank. Anyway, there's a lot of this political wrangling around the church. Who's getting to be in charge and who's getting who put in charge, and Otto the Great is deposing popes. Otto the Third is killing popes. Hugh is going to end up playing a lot of politics and is directly responsible for Otto the Third allowing Sylvester to end up there. There's a lot of mess that starts playing around with who gets to be pope and who gets to put the pope on the throne. One of the things that the church starts trying to do as a way to combat this politics situation is try to play each side off of each other. And what you're going to end up doing is you're going to start seeing the church emerge as supposedly this unaligned third party that can solve disputes. Right? Like if the Holy Roman Emperor, the Germans, are going to get in an argument with the Franks, who's going to settle the score? Well, the Pope will step in and settle the score, but then you have to deal with whichever one is angry at you, because you're not going to find a scenario where they're both happy. If anything, you're going to find a scenario where they're both ticked off at you, and now you've got two angry groups. But, you know, it's this weird balancing act where the popes aren't supposed to be political at all. They're supposed to be religious leaders, and yet they're always in the middle of these political fights. They are either the target of political fights or they're interjecting themselves into the middle of political fights because they have understood that the world has shifted and they now have to be involved in stuff. This is how the Jedi Order fell. You're not too far from it. You're really not too far from it. By following their own rules in very hypocritical and loose interpretations, instead of strictly applying them across the board, picking and choosing when to follow the rules. That's a much more apt metaphor than the sarcastic remark might have initially warranted, but it's pretty good. Now, one of the things that also starts happening during this time period in the religious front is you start developing, or you start seeing develop, these sort of regional, what I like to call flavors of religion. Now, that's not a good word for it. They're not purely denominations, right? These aren't breaks between the Christian groups. But you do start seeing them do stuff differently. The Italians are going to start doing stuff a little bit differently than the Germans. And the Germans are going to do stuff a little bit differently than the French. And the French are going to do stuff a little bit differently than the Italians. Now, this is not nationalism, and this is not religious nationalism. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
That's insane.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I've never seen that happen before.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
Tuna.
I'm Spartacus.
So Nick Slottle, I have never in my years of streaming seen one person subscribe twice in the same stream. That is a feat that will forever go down in history. Thank you again for your subscription. Twice in one go. That's dedication. I don't really know what else to say about that. And Tuna coming in with the tier 2. Thank you for being Spartacus and for showing your true Western heritage, Middle Earthly speaking. Appreciate your support, my friend. Thanks very much. So, these regional flavors that I'm talking about when it comes to the papacy and the religion is a direct reflection of the political landscape. People are going to start thinking a little bit more ethnically or regionally. And it's not going to be based on what we might call racism or something like that. What it's going to be based on is tribalism, right? So when we're both trying to compete about who gets to be pope, my bishops and archbishops and cardinals that are Saxons are going to want somebody that is in their party to be the next pope. And previously, before this, they had all been Italians, right? The Italians get very miffed when we start getting Frankish popes and German popes. They don't like that very much. So the Italian bishops and archbishops and cardinals start being a little bit more cliquish and tribal. And the Frankish bishops and archbishops and cardinals are going to start getting cliquish and be a little bit more tribal. So you start seeing these factions break up along regional lines, even within the Catholic Church leadership. And this is because everybody wants to be the next pope. Not necessarily because we have dramatically different religious ideology, but because we're going to get to push our agendas. And mostly our agendas are going to be politically based. Well, thank you, Nixolotl. I appreciate the heck out of it. So what we're setting ourselves up for is a growing power base argument within the Catholic Church. And this is going to play out really, really nastily in the next time we come around. One of the things that we talk about, or we will talk about next time we come back around to Europe, we'll have a stream that's not based on a 100-year time period. It's going to be backing up a little bit and going forward a little bit, but it's going to be about the Great Schism, where the Catholic Church decides to split. And this is when you really get Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And a lot of the stuff that we're arguing about in our period of time right now in this stream is going to show back up in different ways under a magnifying glass or perhaps in a microwave, depending on how you want to make it bigger or worse. In that stream a couple of months from now, I don't know, a while from now. But another thing that's happening, generally speaking, in Central Europe during this time is growing contact with the outside world. Some of these big kingdoms, especially by the end of the period of time, and I can show you a map of what we're talking about here. Especially here, you can see the Holy Roman Empire at this point is quite big. And you can also see that some of these other regions have sort of shored up their boundaries. You don't see as many fuzzy lines down in this area as you used to, and that's on purpose. West Francia, much more sort of involved and stable. And if you look at where the borders are, they're starting to look fairly familiar, right? If you look at the modern boundaries of France, this territory line right here isn't really that different. If you look at the northern border of Italy right now, it's not really that different than this line right here. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other stuff going on. Croatia today is not nearly this large. Hungary today is not nearly this large. Bulgaria is not even close to this large and is also not even really in the same area anymore. It's like pretty much just right over here. But anyway, there's a lot of change left to happen, but we can start seeing elements of our territory. Look at this. Look at this nicely formed England over here. We'll talk about that next week. Anyway, Bulgaria, right? It's not even where it was anymore. It didn't even control that territory anymore. The Romans controlled, or the Byzantines, whatever you want to call them. You're going to start seeing more contact with the wider outside world. As these countries are going to shore up their borders and become more independent from each other, they're going to start making their own treaties, they're going to start making their own trade, and they're going to realize that they are part of a much larger global system. You're going to start seeing them talk more with the Byzantines. Now, of course, this is going to be starting with Otto the Great and the Holy Roman Empire, because the Byzantines don't like Otto having the title emperor. But this is going to continue to like Otto II. When Otto II was expanding in Italy, we can look down here. You can see this pink territory right here was part of the Byzantine Empire at that point. So if Otto had been able to take the entire boot, he would have literally been taking territory away from the Byzantines. So it's not just over titles, it's also over land. And it's also over religious ideology. There's a big actual theological split that's happening, and we'll come back to this when we talk about the Great Schism, between the East and the Western part of the Christian world. The Fatimids in Egypt, we've talked about them a couple streams ago, are going to begin expanding in the Mediterranean world, and especially over here in some of these islands in the Mediterranean. You're going to start seeing contact between some of these big European powers and the Fatimids down here in Egypt and Northern Africa. Now, that's going to be particularly important because the Fatimids are hooked into this larger Indian Ocean trading network that is really where all the money in the world is right now. Or not like concurrently today, but right now as in the 900 to the 1,000 range. So that's going to get some of them thinking a little bit larger when it comes to like what's the cool stuff, where the cool things are. You're also going to start seeing a lot more contact over here in the Eastern world. As these big empires begin to expand, especially the Holy Roman Empire starts expanding this way, you're going to start running into a lot more people. like Polish people, Magyars or Hungarians, Slavic peoples, the Rus, predecessors of the Russians. And a lot of these people aren't Christian. And some of them do convert, but a lot of them stay very not Christian. And this is going to have opportunity written all over it. Because if you are one of the powers that gets one of these non-Christian groups to convert to Christianity, that group is then going to sort of look up to you as their religious patrons, perhaps. And that's going to give you political sway over them. And maybe they'll look to you to settle political differences and religious differences. And that's going to give your bishops and archbishops more power, which is really useful because you're also going to want other people to vote with your bloc to elect the next pope. And if you can get the Hungarians to convert, or if you can get the Croatians to convert, or if you can get, the Poles to convert, those people might then vote with you in some of these religious disputes, which then gives you more political power, both from the fact that you've elected a pope and because you have these allies. So we're even starting to think bigger. It's not anymore just like we got to go beat up these bad guys because they're invading. It's how can we convert these outsiders to our ways so that we can unbalance the power structure that exists in our favor. So we're even starting to think bigger now. And there's also still Vikings running around all over the place. The Vikings at this point have raided all over Northern Europe, down into Northern Africa, all through the Mediterranean. The Vikings are going to start taking territories of their own right around southern Italy and Sicily. They're still causing a lot of trouble. They're not gone. The Danes are going to be all over the place, the Scandinavians. Over in Great Britain, this is going to have a big impact on how things end up unifying over there. So there's a larger connective world that's beginning to grow during this time period. And it's not really what tips things over into what we might call the Renaissance, but they are definitely building some of the scaffolding that will one day go on to become the Renaissance during this time period. And it's a pretty interesting world. Lots of things in here that we could focus on a lot more, but again, we're starting to try to look at things a little bit more zoomed out, and maybe come back with some really cool spot check stuff for things like viewer request streams. Like we could do a whole stream on Otto the Great easily. But that is going to wrap me up for the night. And I know that was a little bit shorter than what I normally do. But if I'm just being honest, I'm quite tired. I went back to work this week after being on summer break for a few months. And I had my first classes today of the semester. So I've also been doing a lot of work just in prep, to get all my classes straight and get everything organized in the computer systems and stuff like that. So it's been a lot of work where I'm not in the groove of doing a lot of work. I'm still very much in lazy bum mode. I will say though, I was very encouraged by my students this morning. I think there are always going to be some students that show up to college that realize that college is not the best option for them, and there are going to be some people that show up just because they want the college experience, that kind of stuff. But I had some good conversations today, even on day one, and that really gave me a lot of hope for my Tuesday, Thursday classes, and I hope that continues into tomorrow. I had 2 classes today, and I've got 3 classes tomorrow, and I'll have an online class that starts on Monday. But yeah, I'm pretty hopeful for these Tuesday, Thursday classes. When students talk at this level on the early days, that's good. So Kyle, we're doing in-person classes again, but the college really likes it when we offer classes purely online. So I don't do lectures and post them on the internet anymore. What we have is a purely online structure where I build a class in an online learning system, and then they interact with it sort of at their own pace, with a couple of deadlines to turn stuff in. And I'm basically just in the background, posting stuff in discussion boards, posting reminders, sending emails to remind people when stuff is due, answering questions if they need it. But it's more of a self-guided learning approach. Some students take to it really, really well. Other students only take it because they think it's going to be easy, and then they get really, really sucked in, and it's not easy. Well, I mean, okay, so it's easy to do my class, but you do actually have to do the work, right? Yeah, it's just a traditional online class, right? So I don't really like those, and I especially don't like those for sociology, but I understand why students need those, especially students that are non-traditional, that might have jobs or might have other things going on, if they have kids, or if they can't come to campus because of transportation issues or something like that. I understand the need for them, so I don't begrudge the fact that I offer them. But it's hard to recreate a trust basis in an online setting that I can make in my in-person classes, because I get to talk with my students, right? It's very hard to recreate that in an online setting, and I feel like the class does suffer a little bit because of it. You finished one class in 3 or 4 days. You could probably finish all of my class in about a week if you really just decided to bow up and get at it. It is easy, but not work-free. Yeah, exactly. Right. It's easy if you do everything the right way. Like, if you read the instructions are not difficult, and the assignments are not difficult, and the material isn't difficult. But it's not zero work, right? It is actually work. It's not busy work. I've even trimmed all of the fat off. It's a really, really lean online course. But yeah, like you could get everything that you needed to do in my class done in less than 3 hours, unless you were just really, really, really slow writer or a really, really, really slow reader. Like, for a week's worth of assignments, usually my students read like maybe 25, 30 pages and have a quiz, right? And discussion to type in, or they might have to read a couple of pages of a primary source and do a worksheet on it or something like that. So it's not difficult, but it does require attention and keeping up with stuff and time management, which is what a lot of the students struggle with, if I'm being really, really honest. Most of the time when students do poorly in my class, it isn't because they aren't doing, or they're not capable of learning material. It's that they're still trying to figure out how to organize their time and dedicate themselves to getting the stuff done when it needs to be done, and that kind of stuff. It's the soft skills that everybody talks about, or asking for help. It's hard to do sometimes if you have never talked to a professor. You don't know who these people are. You're sort of sending an email into the ether. I get that. And I try to send out video messages and stuff all the time where it's just like me talking to the screen like this, like, hey, everybody, hope you're doing okay, and here's what's coming up, and here's what we got to do this week, and remember to email me if you need anything. But I don't know if those get through as well as I would like for them to. But that's, there's a give and a take. If you can't come to campus, you got to be a little bit more self-motivated, right? But you get the benefit of being able to do classwork at 1 o'clock in the morning in your gym shorts on the couch. So there's an up and a down to everything, right? Okay. I think it's time. Well, I guess we could do this. If you would like, does anybody have any point redemptions that you want to do? Anybody have point redemptions? Is that what you think you wear to bed, gym shorts? I don't really know what you want to wear to bed, Foggage. Also, hey, Foggage, good to see you. I don't know what you wear to bed, and I don't care to know what you wear to bed. It's very hot here, and I'm a hot-natured individual. But I'm still at least taking the gym shorts to bed, right? All right, so Foggage has redeemed the standard question book. Da, 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 da. Standard question book. Lovely little guy. For those of you that have never seen the standard question book before, it's a book full of questions. It was supposed to be a study guide for a home college course, but I don't have any of the rest of the materials. I just have the book full of questions. So here's how it works. We just open to a random page, like, say, this one. And we pick a random question, like, say, this one. And then I read it. And if I know the answer, I tell you the answer. And if I don't know what the answer is, we go look it up. So this says, state the value in United States money of a peso of each of the following countries: Argentina, Chile, Mexico, and Uruguay. I'm going to have to look this up because I don't know the exchange rate between an American dollar and an Argentinian peso. I'm sure that this is listed in the book. Otherwise, they would. I mean, they list a page. If you check page 657, you'll be able to find the answer to this. The dollar to the Argentinian peso, $1 to 349.48 Argentinian pesos. So 1 to, we'll just call it 350. What was the next one? Chile. The exchange rate from the dollar to the Chilean peso is $1 to 864.99 Chilean pesos. So your dollar's going to spend a lot more in Chile than it would in Argentina. 865. We'll just call it 865. Let's look at Mexico. The Mexican peso is $1 to 17.09 Mexican pesos. That's one of the more powerful exchange rates that I've ever seen for the Mexican peso. When I was younger, it used to be dramatically different. It used to be about 1 to 100. To see it 1 to 17 is quite notable for Mexico. Let's look at Uruguay. Uruguay looks like it's doing pretty well. $1 to 38.01 Uruguayan pesos. So there we go. Yeah, so Mexico wins. Mexico wins. That is a very fluctuating answer. Yes, all these countries do use pesos. I was wondering if you ever done any streams on the Templars. Not the Templars specifically, Matt. We have done streams on Crusades, and we did a stream on some of the other Knights Orders, but not specifically the Templars. But that'd be a great viewer request stream if you were interested. What's up, Agni? How's it going, my friend? Welcome, welcome. They increased the Mexican peso's worth times 10. It didn't make the news, so I heard about it very late. Ah! So they did some currency manipulation stuff. Interesting. Interesting. Highlander, specifically the backgrounds of the three main characters. Oh, so you want to do something like the history of Clan MacLeod? I don't know if there's enough material for that. I could definitely do something on the 22nd dynasty of Egypt. I actually wrote a paper about them in college in my master's stuff. So we could totally do 22nd dynasty of Egypt. That'd be easy. And the Kurgans. So steppe peoples of the 16th century in Central Asia is things that we could do. It wouldn't be like the Kurgan specifically, and the Kurgan was based on a group of people that wasn't real per se. It's sort of an amalgamated concept that was fairly Orientalist. Kind of came out of that period of time where Europeans were sort of labeling everybody in Europe. I'm sorry, in Asia. So you could there's stuff. Yeah, exactly. It's like kind of a thought group. The hardest one of those would be the Scottish one. I don't know if there's enough about Clan MacLeod specifically to do a history. I say that, and then I'm sure that I could dig a lot of stuff up about it. It would be the one that I would have to do the most research on. I'll put it that way. But yeah, if you wanted to do any of that stuff, yeah, the movie covered that. Sure. But yeah, any of those would be doable. So if you had the points that you wanted to spend, we could do it on that. All right, Agni says, decent. You ran a chess tournament at the Avatar Yoga Festival last weekend. That sounds awesome. I know that you were playing in a tournament as well, and I haven't actually had a chance to talk to you since you played in it. How'd you do in the big Chicago tournament that you got in? Catch back up a chat. You wasn't sure maybe they had changed currency systems in the time since the question book was written. Kyle, that's quite possible, right? I mean, it is at this point almost 110 years old, so there's a lot that could happen in 110 years. So that's a valid question, very valid question. When a candy bar gets to be $5, I wouldn't mind them scaling down again by 100. We could use 5 and dime stores again. Foggage, I like that sentiment. The issue is that they wouldn't also they would do that in conjunction with scaling back pay. There is no way they would. So first off, we're living in a bit of a fallacy, even considering that this is going to happen, because it's not going to happen. That the central government will never, in our lifetimes that I can predict, so not in the foreseeable lifetime, take such a dramatic direct step as deflating the currency that severely. I just don't see it happening. It would most notably it would cause our foreign debt partners to blow their tops. They would not want to do that. And it would give people way too much purchasing power and destabilize the political system too much for the rich people to be able to hold on to a lot of the power that they already have. You could have like a $2 1 ounce gold coin or $20 gold. Yeah. It was a disaster. Wow. 36 out of 125. That's not a disaster, man. That's out of 125 people that played in this tournament, I did better than I'm so bad at math in my head. Yeah, I did better than 70% of people in my group. 71%. You are 28th percentile. That's pretty freaking great. Yeah, that's like that's a B, man. That's a great grade. I would say congratulations on that, because that's crazy. I would celebrate that. Now, I know that you're probably expecting a lot more from yourself, and I think that everybody can be our own worst critics. And I suspect that you probably have gone over the games that you played and found the specific moves where you're like, well, that's where I lost the game, and you're beating yourself up over that stuff. But I think that's a great thing. If you had won the last two games, you would have clinched second place. Wow, see, like, you were 2 games away from being the second spot. So that's a pretty great result. I know that you're not happy with it, and there is a healthy amount of self-motivation that you can have, and you can use that as fire to push you towards the next one. But I say congratulations, and I say cheers. So if everybody collectively just agreed to call a dollar 1 penny, yeah, we could do that. And see, that's the thing about our modern currency. We could say that it's whatever we want to say, and if everybody agreed, it would just be that way. But you know. We'll probably just stop using coins, and it would be like yen. Yeah, probably so. That the coins are already starting to lose purchasing power. The only reason we still print the penny is because of the massive penny lobby, the copper lobby that just blows up Congress. It costs us more than a penny to make a penny. If we could say that donuts are currency, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we could say whatever currency is currency, and if everybody agreed on it. I mentioned this in class today. I was like, if everybody decided that the dollar was worthless and we all went back to trading goats, how many people would be rich right now, right? But yeah, not tulips. We already tried that. Tulip-based economy right into the water, right? Penny is used many times. Its price is immaterial, right? Yeah, it's crazy. We could say imaginary blockchain code is currency. Yeah, I mean, we could say imaginary blockchain code is a work of art too, right? We could just slap a picture of a monkey on something and call it valuable, and people just eat that crap up with a spoon. Time to stock up on goats and chickens? Correct. Bottle caps are bust, right? Fall out all the way. Goats and soda, perhaps. If we switched to the goat system, you would be exactly as wealthy then as I am now. I'm with you. Because I have no goats. I do know where goats are. There are some people about a minute and a half's walk from me that have goats, and I would have to, we would have post-apocalyptic fight about that, right? Not the bottle cap candy, right? Oh yeah, exactly. It's like an NFT. That's what I was getting at. Tropical, the Bored Apes. I saw that people that had purchased Bored Apes are trying to form a class action lawsuit against the auction houses that sold them NFTs because they're now upset that they've lost their butt on the value of the NFT. And I think that the auction houses are just going to laugh at them, and I think a judge is going to throw it out of court. Deer or goats, right? Big wild goats. I'll allow it. Right. I was actually thinking of renting a goat to eat the brush by the drainage ditch of your lawn. Yeah, I know that's kind of a thing now, especially if it's got like poison ivy in it, because goats are immune to poison ivy. So if it's got thorns and stuff like that, yeah, get yourself a goat, right? This brings us to an interesting thing. I don't know if you all have ever heard the phrase, "that really gets my goat." Horses are social animals, and one of the things that a lot of horse breeders will do to keep their horses company was to have goats. So if you wanted to screw with somebody the day before a big race, you would go steal the goat out of the horse's stable that was going to be running against you in the race, and it would make their horse really nervous and freak them out in their head and maybe cause you to lose the race. So if I get your goat, I'm messing with you to try to make you fail. That's where it comes from. We had goats and they'd eat that. They ate everything. Flowers, neighbor's laundry, everything. They took away my Xanax. Yeah, that's like, you took away my Xanax. I've never considered it, but that really... well, no, we need to... Gets and... You need something that alliterates, because gets my goat. That's what really makes the phrase go. And Xanax is hard to... hard to rhyme. Really zings my Xanax. I don't know. It does. It's almost there, but zing isn't the right word. That really pops my Paxil. It's an emotional support animal. It's exactly what it is. All right. Let's see who's online. I'm gonna go do a raid real quick because I'm pretty tired. I think it's about time for us to do the raid. All right. Let's go raid Homozygote. Annex my Xanax. I like the multiple syllable alliteration there. Da 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 da. Yeah. That's. It doesn't quite roll as well, but I dig it. For those of you that don't know, I'm part of an online streaming community called the Knowledge Fellowship, which is a group of online educators that talk about stuff that makes people smarter, theoretically speaking anyway, right? And Homozygote just got folded into the larger group. Homozygote is a I don't think he's an immunologist. He's in lab science and he does a lot of stuff with things like COVID pandemic, and I was on his channel a couple of weeks ago and had a pretty good time, and I hang out in his chat a little bit. So we're going to go and raid Homozygote. But before we do, I'm going to go ahead and hit the button here, but I do need to give a special shout out for those that do not know. I have started a Patreon, not asking for anything specific, but I know that there are people that asked me how they could support the channel without giving money to Twitch. If you want to, that's the way to do it. You can click the link right there. It is called, I only have one tier, and it's basically called the alternate subscription. And I say thank you to people who are subscribed. So DCI Banks and Big Tune and Neil, thank you for your support. And 404 error, that's not right. Worked for me. Must be... So if you want to subscribe, but you don't want to subscribe in Twitch, there's an option. It's not anything specific. You don't have to. Don't ever feel pressured. But there's that. I also need to say thank you to DCI Banks, who sent me a book. So I made a list. If you want to send me a book, you can send me a book. So there's a list for that. Thank you for sending me Fall of Gondolin. But Yell Adventure, share some emotes, and let's go say hello to Homozygote with our raid. See everybody next time.